This podcast is a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to find out more.
G'day guys, it is Mike here, and this is another Mike Talks. I was so excited to chat to this guy. Actually, because his name is Guy Davis. I was really interested to get to know Guy a little bit more because I've been listening to him on the Four Finger Discount podcast network for a while. If you've heard every episode of Mike Talks, you will know I chatted to Brendan Dando, who created the Four Finger Discount podcast network. Guy, for the past few years, has been on air on their podcast, Four Finger Discount, which is a Simpsons review podcast, but they also do a bunch of other podcasts, including a South Park podcast, a Futurama podcast, Seinfeld, Friends, Mandalorian, basically every TV show you've ever watched, as we allude to in this. And Guy's career background was actually in print media and film criticism. And I really wanted to talk to him about his experiences working in the industry, because for me, it's pretty much only been digital media and online and, radio and podcasting. But, he just has such an accomplished career in print media, and I just had to find out kind of how he got into it back then. And then because Guy is such an accomplished film critic, I had to put to him some of my favorite Millennial movies and get his thoughts on them, which we kind of do at the end of this chat. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Check out the other one with Brendan Dando, which will be on this feed as well. That was a great chat. But without further ado, here is my chat with Guy Davis. Enjoy. All right, welcome to Mike Talks, the sometimes bonus edition of my podcast that I sometimes do when I sometimes have time, and this week I do have time, and I am joined by the legend that is Guy Davis. Welcome to the show, Guy.
Mike, thank you very much for taking out of your increasingly hectic schedule to have a chat with me, because, following Mike on Twitter, it's like, oh my God, what the hell is he up to now? What is he not doing? Yeah, because he is constantly up to something, whether it's, putting out short videos or, producing other people's podcasts or, of course, doing his own. So, yeah, Mike is always up to something, and I am glad that he took a few moments out of his day to have a chat with me. So thank you very much for having me on, man.
Well, you're selling yourself short. You're also a very busy person. And for those who don't know Guy, now this is the first time where we've chatted. Well, we're not even face-to-face. We're doing this over Zoom. We've spoken on the phone once, but we have kind of been in each other's circles for a bit. One reason for that is because you are now the co-host of the Four Finger Discount Simpsons podcast, and I've had Dando on this podcast before from Four Finger Discount, but also you've appeared on Fofop with Charlie Clausen a few times, and I edit and produce that, so I've heard you talk a lot because I listen to Four Finger Discount. Do you want to just give the listeners a bit of background on who you are and what your career has been like and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, gosh, where to begin? Because I'm, I don't know, old.
How old actually are you? 35.
I'm 53.
Okay.
Flip that.
Yeah, got close. I was channeling something.
Yeah, but look, for the bulk of my career, I've been a print journalist and primarily in entertainment. I was a movie reviewer. I'm based in Geelong, Victoria, Seattle on the Barwon, and I was the movie reviewer for the paper down here, the Geelong Advertiser. I did that for about 25 years or so. I was a general reporter for them for a while as well, but being an actual news reporter takes a very specific mindset and personality, which I didn't really have.
It's easy to talk shit about pop culture without having to worry too much about anything. But when you start getting into politics and hot takes on all those kind of issues, it's just a place people like us don't want to be.
Pretty much the case, yeah. I didn't really have an aptitude for knocking on someone's door and saying, "So your daughter got hit by a car. Tell me about it. Bet you're feeling bad, right? Give me a quote." Some people thrive on that. Some people are really good at it. Not me. So,
well, I'm with you there, man. Don't worry.
Yeah. So
that's why we work in comedy.
So yeah, I initially started doing reviews and interviews for a street paper down in Geelong called Forte. It was a bit like Beat or Impress. You find your pubs and clubs, and I was with them for a few years and sort of I learned my trade there. But I mean, I was studying journalism at uni. Not really feeling it. I mean, I picked up some good education there and all that stuff. But honestly, I learned more from the time I spent at Forte than I did at uni, and then sort of made my way up the ranks and started working with the Advertiser and was doing other jobs in the interim. I mean, this was a fun time, Mike. The 1990s. You can actually sort of make a living or scratch together a living out of writing about pop culture. It wasn't just a hobby. So that
wasn't just like everyone has a pop culture podcast and a YouTube channel and everything like that. Yeah, I bet.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, the hustle is real, as they say. Sort of running parallel with that, I was working for a joint called Pagemasters, and I put together a TV guide for them that was syndicated to a bunch of regional papers around the country, maybe a dozen or so at its peak. And yeah, I did that again for about 20 years or so. And as the media has slowly sort of contracted, and you're getting, fewer people to do more work and all that, I sort of found myself getting edged out of that. And I ended up working for a place in Geelong called Pop Culture, a shop. Well, actually, I mean, I was working at their HQ and, doing a bit of marketing stuff and also a bit of warehouse stuff. I'd occasionally go in the warehouse and pick and pack and put stuff in boxes and send Funko Pop vinyls all around the world. And that's where I met my man, Brendan Dando. He'd actually started there not long before me.
And when we're talking about Brendan Dando, we're talking about when he came on my show, I said to him, your whole life is living in the past and trying to monetize it. Like, that guy lives and breathes nostalgic pop culture, and the empire he started with the Four Finger Discount Network is just like, I look up to him so much in the podcast space.
He is remarkable. I mean, he is an absolute workhorse. Always, coming up with content, coming up with ideas for content, fashioning my ramblings into something resembling a show. So good on him for that. No, he is remarkable. And you're right. I don't think I've ever seen him in an item of clothing that doesn't reference The Simpsons, Futurama, or an Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah,
it's what he wears, what he's got.
Yeah.
No, fantastic fella. And they plunked me down next to him and said, "Do what Dando does." So I learned from him. He grasped fairly quickly that I had a handle on popular culture. I liked movies, I liked TV, and I could kind of talk underwater. It's one of the reasons I'm not working there anymore. I was talking too much and not working enough.
Mate, every office I've ever worked in is a bit like that with me. So
so he mentioned that he had this podcast that he was doing about The Simpsons with his mate. I said, that sounds really nice. Good on you.
Sounds cool, man.
I didn't really
Keep
know
it
much
up.
about podcasts and that.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about
job.
podcasts this day. Yeah, it's like, that sounds like fun. You have fun. Very patronizing of me. He was doing it with a gentleman named Mitch, and I would come on occasionally and say, "Oh, do you want to come on and talk about this movie?" I was still reviewing at that stage. And say, "Oh, yeah, come on and talk about it, or come on and talk about the new Avengers or whatever," which I was happy to do, and we had fun doing it. Then I believe it was the start of 2020. Mitch decided to pull out of the show. And Dano asked if I wanted to take come on board full time, and I'm like, sounds like fun. I was a little less patronizing at this stage. Well, no. I mean, I saw the effort that Dano was putting in and the results he was getting, because I mean, he's really good at it. So I was happy to jump on his bandwagon and ride his coattails and any other metaphor you choose to use. And we've been doing it for what? Let's say 2020, 2020. So we're coming up on 3 years now.
Yeah. And the Four Finger Discount Network spans now a Simpsons pod, Futurama, Mandalorian movie reviews, Seinfeld, for anything you've watched in your life, they're doing a podcast. And I love it. I love the output you guys are doing. And from that story, just that's me kind of getting to know your background as well. There's so many threads I kind of want to go down. Like, one of the first things you said about how when you were at uni compared to when you started actually working at, was it Forte, that magazine?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and how you actually just, I'm the exact same because, you know, I was studying media at uni and I loved going to uni. I loved my degree. It was great. But when I actually started getting into radio stations and actually working on radio shows and working a panel, because that my background is in commercial radio, like it was like a whole new process. Like I had learnt all this theory about media and pop culture, but like to actually get in there and start doing it, you just learn so much more than you ever could from a class.
Really the case, yeah. I mean, you do have to get your hands dirty. Look, there's certainly something to be said for theory, but I think once you get in and actually start doing, that's when you start learning. And it becomes a bit of a, I'd like to say, perpetual motion machine. You know, you learn, you do, you learn, you do, you learn, you do, you learn, you do.
I call it a snowball effect.
That's a much better way of putting it. That's why you're Mike and and I'm not.
Simplify it a bit, man.
Yeah, but I honestly, I had an absolute blast. Starting to work at Ford. I mean, this was, I was in my early 20s, working for this street paper. You're interviewing, bands, musicians, occasionally, other creative types. Sort of learning on the fly, as I said. I was doing reviews and really just sort of finding my voice because, I mean, I had a column there as well and got to do that every week. And that was, basically, I think I went to the editor and said, you go to the video store and, God, showing my age and showing my timeline here, but
that's not that old, mate. I grew up with video stores. Don't worry. I lost a lot of hours browsing the kids section at Video Easy. Believe me.
Lucky lad. Happy times in your life. But I said, you go to the video store and all the new releases are out. So I'd like to do a thing where, you go to the back shelves and here are some, hidden gems you might find. And sort of parlay that into a column that ran for, from like the early 90s and through till about the late 2010s at various places.
Yeah, right.
So it was it was a great place to learn the mechanics of a quote unquote newsroom. I mean, it was very sort of, it wasn't an official newsroom, but it was a work environment. So learning how the journalistic procedure worked or the editorial procedure worked, because I sort of rose up the ranks there as well. And it was great. It was fantastic. And then, sorry, I'm going off on different tangents and sort of chasing my own tail here.
That's actually kind of leads a bit into what I was going to say next, because it's interesting as someone who's been in the media industry for so long, like what are your observations of, and you alluded to it a little bit, but what are your observations from literally starting in print media to now where it's like, what even is print media now? And what even is online journalism when it's so much of just, let's make as many articles as possible with the most clickbaity pictures and headlines? Like, what are your thoughts on that? And what do you think of this new media environment of YouTube and content creators and podcasts and everything like that?
It's really interesting, Mike, because I mean, I remember there's a famous quote by Francis Coppola, who made The Godfather and Apocalypse Now and all that kind of stuff. In the 80s or the 70s, he said, like technology is going to reach the point, he said, where, some 12-year-old girl from a small town will be able to, make a movie.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she won't have anything restricting her or holding her back. She'll have the resources, and the only thing that'll be limiting her is her imagination. And we're like, wow, Francis, that sounds like a wonderful dream. I'm sure it'll happen sometime around circa the year 3000. And of course, cut to a couple of decades later, and that's exactly the case.
We're here.
Yeah. Now, I'm all for, the democratization of media, seizing the means of production, all that kind of stuff. The only downside that I can see is it just leads to too much content. So then you've got to... then you've got your work cut out for you, finding something that really vibes with you, so to speak.
Do you feel that though, and not to like go back to your age, but like in all honesty, do you think that things were simpler back when you were young in terms of choosing what to watch, listen to, engage with? Like, do you feel overwhelmed now? And as someone who's actively observed it, what do you think of that?
It's certain. I do think it's the case, and I don't want to sound all sort of woe is me, but I mean, I
Yeah.
really think there is such a thing as analysis paralysis. You're stymied by having too many choices, and it can result in like, you know what, I think I'm just going to go with what I'm familiar with, as opposed to maybe seeking out something new, because it's always been my uh, inclination or recollection that you find a voice that you can trust in the critical space, and it's like, you know what, this movie's actually pretty good, or this book's pretty good, or so and so. And it's like, okay, well, I'll go check that out. And now you've sort of got voices coming at you from every different angle saying, no, check this out, or check me out, or you might like this. I'm like, I can't take it. My brain's just, got a little too much mileage on the meter, and I don't have the bandwidth to say, oh, no, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And like, no, I think I'll just go with that. So it can be a little overwhelming, absolutely. I mean, you hear talk about, gatekeeping as a bit of a dirty word. It's like, oh, well, you're only going to let us watch this kind of thing if we listen to your opinions. Like, and I've always said this, I always viewed gatekeeping as someone who ushers you in as opposed to keeping you out. I'm the kind of gatekeeper who's like, hey, there's some good stuff over that way. If you head through that gate, you'll do all right. But, or, occasionally you've got to slam the gate and say, don't watch that. It's garbage. Yeah.
So I think like with gatekeeping in fandom, like I always see gatekeeping as like people who are like, you're not a real fan unless XYZ, right? And it's like the Star Wars community seems to be really big with this, where it's like, if you like the prequels, you're not an actual Star Wars, and shit like that. And to be honest, I reckon fandom brings out the worst in me, because I'm one of those people who I get so obsessed with something, and if I like something, I really like it. And then if I see someone else who likes it but doesn't get it as much as me, I just get angry at them. I'm like, you could never possibly understand this thing to the level at which I do, and I don't want you to enjoy it because of that. I've been trying to work on that over the years, to be honest.
Good for you, Mike. That is an issue you should tackle. No, and look, believe me, I know what it's like to love something very, very much, to love a piece of art or entertainment or culture or whatever so much that you're like, they made this especially for me. You don't get it. I get it. Yeah. So it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And I've said this on the show that I do with Dando, that, or even the shows I've done with Charlie, there's nothing finer than, starting to watch a movie or starting to read a book or hearing a song's like, oh yeah, you get me. Yeah. You and me are simpatico. It just, because as I always say, we tell stories and we read stories to know that we're not alone in the world. So yeah.
I've never thought about it like that. That's really fascinating, because it's true. Like some stuff, sometimes you hear a song or an album and you're just like, okay, this is exactly what I needed at this exact point of my life. And you're like, it feels like I'm being spoken to by this artist right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not to get too sort of, I don't know, maudlin or preachy or, revealing much. It sometimes comes from very, very unexpected sources. I mean, there was a time about 2013 or so, going through a really rough patch in my life. I'd had a very bad breakup, and that sort of had me questioning about a lot of stuff. My father had died a few years beforehand. I think there was a lot of stuff that I hadn't acknowledged in my life, and it was starting to sort of make its way to the surface. And I was just feeling very anxious and sad all the time. It was great. fun times. I went to see...
Sounds like my whole life, to be honest, mate.
I was still reviewing at this stage, and I went to see a movie called After Earth. That's the Will Smith...
Oh, yeah? With Will Smith?
Yeah.
And wasn't it like it was quite panned critically, wasn't it? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah. I mean, it's a nepotism project for, it's Will Smith's present to Jaden Smith. Hey, son, I'm going to make you a movie star for your birthday. And I had M. Night Shyamalan as the director, and people are going, oh, I don't know about this guy anymore. So I went in with, guarded expectations. And there's a scene in it where Will Smith is talking about, it's a silly movie about fighting aliens and all that kind of it. Actually, it's not.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty good. I think it's a bit underrated. But there's a scene where
I
he's
can
talking,
tell.
there's a scene where he's talking about he was fighting this alien that was going to kill him. And he sort of had this moment where he realized he was going to die. And he started talking about fear and, saying, I think the line was something like, danger is very real, but fear is something that you've conjured up in your mind, and it's a reaction to something that hasn't happened or may never happen. And for some reason, that just really resonated in my head. I was like, the stuff that I'm worried about may not actually happen, may not actually be real, and I may have the ability to sort of, rewrite my own story and rewrite my own future and all that kind of bit, which is it's a little late to get that,
but that's
in
the thing.
40s, but
yeah. But that's the thing. Fear kind of does dictate your future because you're like, I can't do this because this might happen, and then because of that arbitrary link you've made of that fear of a reality that's not even come to fruition, you're just never gonna go and do that thing that you kind of want to do, right? And I think that is really powerful. And the other thing with that is, like, even though you look at something like After Earth, which I guess, like, I haven't seen it, but if you go by popular critical opinion, it's a bad movie, right? But I have tried in the last few years to kind of stamp out me saying that something is bad or shit or not funny or not good, because I'm like, and I actually learnt this in my media degree, which is that every single person that engages with anything, show, movie, album, game, book, whatever, the meaning is different for every person based on their experience of the world. So something that, like, resonates super hard with me, someone else might be like, that was the worst thing I've ever seen. But it's like, it's not your place. And maybe as a critic, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on this. Like, it's not your place to tell someone else this is a objectively bad thing. It's more your place to be like, I think this, and for me, it was this. But I always say, like, a critic is just one person's opinion at the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it is. I mean, it's sort of implicit in anything that you write or anything that you broadcast or anything that you podcast, that, it's always prefaced by three little words, my opinion is, or I believe this. And then everything you say afterwards, like, you can take or leave. I mean, if you put some stock in my opinion, by all means, listen. I mean, if I tell you that so-and-so is shit, you might, guy hasn't led me too far astray in the past, but then you might.
Yeah.
I mean, I have good friends who I, will recommend stuff to, but one of them says, I always go the opposite of what you pick.
Right. And that's still you doing your job as a critic, because he knows I disagree with everything Guy thinks.
I'm happy to be a barometer in that way.
It's funny as well, though, because, like, an example I always think of is my favorite album of all time is Blink-182's self-titled album from 2003. Now, I doubt you've heard it, but the reason I love it so much is because all of the themes of that album spoke to me at the time I heard it.
Yeah.
None of it I really relate to now, but when I heard it, it was like, just, this is my inner dialogue in music form. And, like, I'm sure if you listened to it, you'd be like, I don't relate to any of this. It's sort of like, yeah. Well, actually, Guy, the 2003 self-titled Blink-182 album was a noticeably darker shift for the band, but we won't get into that here. But yeah, it's just interesting that, like I said, like, texts have different interpretations for different people. Hey, I wanted to do this thing, if it's cool.
Of course.
As I mentioned to you, but I've got to explain it to the listeners. As a professional film critic that you are, and you've had a very successful career in film criticism, I love movies, but I'm always like, I don't care as much about the quality of filmmaking. I just want to see a movie that has a funny story or something that I like about it, right? So what I wanted to do here today with you is I've got 10 millennial movies that I think a lot of millennials really like and have a lot of nostalgia towards, but I don't necessarily know if they're good films. And I want your honest take as a film reviewer on some of these movies.
Okay, and also as a card-carrying member of Generation X. So, yeah, is that what the kids are into? Okay, fine. Go ahead, Mike.
If you haven't seen them, just that's fine. We can just skip over, and I've got some backups. Okay, so start off with what I think is an easy one, and don't worry about disappointing me. What are your thoughts on the 2003 Jack Black film School of Rock?
I'm a fan. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one because I'm gonna put my movie nerd hat here on. Nerd hat on. So yeah, apologies for that. But yeah, it's by a guy called Richard Linklater, who I really dig.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of movies that I just part of my personal pantheon. I mean, Dazed and Confused. Its spiritual sequel, Everybody Wants Some, which is a really, really good movie that not enough people have seen. The Before trilogy, the Ethan Hawke, Julie Delpy movies.
Oh yeah,
I mean
he did Boyhood as well, didn't he?
He did Boyhood as well. Yeah, he's got a really interesting career in terms of just the stuff that he takes on. I mean, you can find sort of thematic similarities in a lot of his stuff, but School of Rock seemed like, oh, he's taking a bit of a swing for the commercial big leagues here. You know, Jack Black was becoming a big name at that stage. I think he was, you know, coming off High Fidelity and all that. And I think this was one of the first things where it's like, yeah, let's see if we can make a whole movie around Jack Black. And of course, he lived up to it and then some. I'm a fan of School of Rock. I haven't rewatched it in a very long time, I got to say. I won't say it's one of my all-time favorites, but it's certainly one that, I think it just gets the job done. There are movies like that when it's not really the way anymore. I mean, not enough people are sort of watching free-to-air TV, but say you're sort of flicking through the channels and going, oh, School of Rock's on. Yeah, cool. All right. So, you know, movies like The Fugitive or Argo or something like that. I mean, it's like, yeah, all right. Yeah, sticking with that one. That's good. I mean, something that if you land on it, it's like, yeah, fantastic. It's like you found $5.
You're happy to sit through it.
Yeah. You found $5.
You found $5 on the floor. Yeah,
or a pair of pants you haven't worn in a while. It's like, nice. Nice little discovery.
I'm happy. Look, if you say the rest of them are shit, I'll be fine with that. Basically, I just wanted to hear that you thought School of Rock, because I think for a lot of millennials, we were the age of all the kids in the School of Rock. So like, that's why it just hits so hard with us. And, all right.
And the other great thing about it, it's got a terrific cast of young actors in it. I mean, just child actors. Yeah. I mean, the chances are it could have gone all cutesy and shit. But no, all these kids felt like stereotypes / archetypes, but also real and kind of had personality. So yeah, fan. I'm a fan.
All right. This one, I think, could rub people the wrong way if you don't like it. But again, be honest. What are your thoughts on the 2001 animated film Shrek?
Oh, no, I got nothing against Shrek. I think Daniel and I got in a bit of trouble. Well, no, I think I got in trouble because on a recent Four Finger Discount, I might have not dissed Shrek, but not properly respected Shrek.
You got to respect Shrek. He's a big deal for us.
I like it fine. I think Mike Myers is actually really good casting. I would have loved to have heard the version with Chris Farley, but I honestly think that Mike Myers did right by the character and did right by the movie and all that. And, you know, he had great chemistry with Eddie Murphy and all that. It's got a lot of visual imagination. I mean, I think it's one of those movies where, like, say, with Halloween or something, it influenced so much stuff going forward that you go back and watch the original and you go, it's pretty good, I guess. No, it's quite so special about it. No. It was here first, and it did all this stuff first.
It's sort of like those people who say, oh, the Beatles weren't that good. And you're like, yeah, but they were doing stuff that people hadn't done before, man. You don't get it, man. Like, it's like that sort of vibe.
Yeah. Now, admittedly, Shrek is sort of riding on the coattails of Pixar, but I think Shrek also invented its own...
No, it's not. Shrek's way better than Pixar. Sorry, guy. Wrong opinion.
I said there were no wrong opinions, but mate, no. Shrek did sort of start its own thing or its own genre with, you know, that's very pop music heavy soundtrack. Everything's a bit quippy, kind of glib, but also very sentimental. It's I'm a fan. I think my favorite character out of the whole franchise is probably Puss in Boots, though.
Yeah, Antonio Banderas does such a good job with that character.
He really does. Yeah, so
and he's just like the smooth talking cat. Yeah, I love it.
But I must admit, if you put all 4 Shrek, because there's like 4, aren't there? I mean, there's what? Shrek, Shrek 2, Shrek the Third, Shrek Forever After? Correct. And there are various spin-offs. If you put all 4 in front of me, I'm like, I couldn't tell you what happened in 2 as opposed to 4.
Yeah, right. I do think the first one is like easily the most iconic, yeah. Mike Talks will be right back. Excuse this interruption, everyone. Just a small reminder that Mike Talks is part of the 20th Century Boy podcast. 20th Century Boy is my main solo podcast that comes out every Thursday. Follow the antics of me, Mike, a writer and producer from here in Melbourne, as I dissect and unpack the latest news in pop culture, like movies, games, music, and all other nerdy stuff. Plus, I'd love for you to check out my other podcast, Harry Potter and the Boys. It's a fan fiction Harry Potter podcast that I wrote when I was 13 years old. Each week, I get a comedian on to read a chapter from my fanfic. I've had Jack Post from Hamish and Andy, Tim McDonald from The Cheap Seats, Tim McDonald and Sam Garlep from The Cheap Seats, Dilruk Jayasena, Luke Kidgel, and many more. I'd love for you to become a part of the Radio Mike family and start listening to both of my shows. Anyway, let's get back to the pod. We'll go on to the next one here. Now, I doubt you've seen this one, but I'm just going to put it out there. But you would have seen a lot of movies you didn't want to see for your job, right?
That's why they pay you.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you have seen this, I will be so happy. Have you seen, I think, the 1999 film, Pokemon the First Movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back?
I may have, because I remember writing a review of a Pokemon. Was this the sequel? Because there was another Pokemon movie before that?
No, because it's Pokemon the First Movie. I think this was the only one that hit cinemas in Australia.
Okay, then. Yeah, because I think I wrote a review saying, I might be aging out. And this is me at 30.
Do you remember anything about what happened in the movie?
Not really, no. Okay, so, I'm sorry. I can't give you a definitive opinion one way or another. So
it could be the best movie ever. It could be the next Shawshank.
It could well be. I mean, it could be like, oh, wow, okay, there's Princess Mononoke, and then there's this. They're 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. All right. More generally, any of the Harry Potter films.
I got in, not in trouble, but I was watching Goblet of Fire not long ago.
Yes.
And I think I wrote on Facebook or on Twitter saying, possible best of the franchise. I know people love Azkaban, and they should. It's a really good movie. Azkaban's the 3rd one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, correct. It sounds. Yeah. You know what? I'm impressed by how much you already know. I'm already sold on this one.
Yeah, my ex-wife really liked the Harry Potter movies, the books. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so, when the movies came out, when the first one came out in 2001, we were like, yeah, go check out Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone if you're not an American.
Those damn Americans don't know what a philosopher is.
And I must admit, I was like, if they can sustain this through the whole thing, they're going to do well, because, I mean, they cast the 3 leads very well. And I've got to say, Draco Malfoy, I thought what's his name? Tom Felton?
Tom Felton, yeah.
Was very good as Draco. I mean, they cast the kids very well, but especially the core 3. Yeah. And then they just surround them with all the, the best of British. How can you fail? Look, I don't want to go into much about J.K. Rowling in terms of where she's at these days. Her opinion is her opinion. I think she's a fantastic storyteller, fantastic plotter, and all that kind of business. A plotter of Potter.
So good at like leaving breadcrumbs and like bits that you're like, this is irrelevant. And then you're like, oh, that's now the biggest plot point in this series.
Terrific big picture person. So, but I remember watching Goblet of Fire not long ago. My girlfriend's kids were going through the whole series.
Yeah.
And I sat down for Goblet of Fire. Oh, yeah, this is the one with Pattinson. I like that one. So, Hey, I just really dug it. I was a big fan of Goblet of Fire. I think, yeah, Prisoner of Azkaban is probably the best made because Alfonso Cuarón, who directed that, and he made Gravity and a whole bunch of other stuff, is just a shit hot filmmaker. But Mike Newell, who made Goblet of Fire, ain't bad either. And yeah,
Has he directed anything else?
Mike Newell,
like I assume he has. Yeah.
yeah, he was a bit of a sort of a journeyman UK filmmaker. He made Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Oh.
Made a terrific gangster movie called Donnie Brasco with Johnny Depp and Al Pacino back in the late 90s. And yeah, I thought, well, we'll get the special effects guys to handle the special effects, but this is a guy who knows how to work with actors and knows how to tell a story and all that kind of business. Look, I think not that it falls off in the second half, but I prefer the first half of the saga to the second half, if you know what I mean.
In terms of the movies or the whole franchise?
Oh, just in terms of the whole story, I think it just gets a bit much near the end. So, I mean, I saw them all and I liked them all. I don't think there are any that I sort of walked out of going, nah, drop the ball on that one. I mean, the first two, they're very kids movie. They're very for the.
They are, yeah. They're very fun fantasy. Look at this magic world, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the third one they start to get a bit darker, and that's when, yes, that's for cool cats like me. So, Azkaban and Goblet of Fire were probably my favorites. When does Lupin show up?
Lupin's Prisoner of Azkaban. That's David Thewlis, yeah.
David Thewlis. So I love that guy, and I thought he was really good in that role.
Azkaban's great because you get him, you get Gary Oldman as Sirius Black, and some great moments with them and Alan Rickman, as Snape, and they brought those characters to life so well. So yeah, I love that so much.
I was very fortunate. Something I always do on whether I'm with Charlie Clausen on Fofop or with Dando on Four Finger Discount, I'll always say, okay, put your hard hat on because I'm going to drop some names here.
Yeah, do it.
Jason Isaac, who played Lucius Malfoy. He was
and he played Captain Hook in the 2003 Peter Pan film, which was great.
He was fantastic in that. And I think he was out filming it in Australia when he was promoting Chamber of Secrets.
Oh, that's interesting. It probably would have been Chamber of Secrets because that came out in 2002 and then Peter Pan came out in 2003.
Yeah, but he was a fantastic interview. I was lucky enough to speak to him a few times over the course of my career, but this was the first time. And he was talking about the first time he was on the Harry Potter set, and he sort of did his Malfoy voice, and he said that Daniel Radcliffe said to him, "Is that your voice you're going to use? Oh, that's brilliant!" And I just he channeled Daniel Radcliffe just being this young actor. It's like, oh, you can do that. Oh, you're going to do it that way. Oh, that's so good. It's like, oh, it just gave you a real insight into this whole, I don't know, esprit de corps that the Potter cast had. I mean, you're full of just these shit hot best of British actors and all these enthusiastic young kids, and they're all learning from one another and looking out for one another. It sounds like a really great atmosphere. I'm sure there was bad shit that went down. Not bad shit, but I'm sure people had bad days.
Yeah. I agree though. It does seem like, for a film that was predominantly based around child stars, most of those kids, and maybe it's the difference between an American production and a British production, but most of them as adults seem reasonably stable, normal-ish people, whether they're in acting or not. Yeah. Well, whereas then you look at your Macaulay Culkins and I reckon like the Stranger Things kids, like I get worried about them. Like I'm always like they're going to be the next washed up child stars, and I hate it. But yeah,
I like to think there have been some lessons learned from previous things, and hopefully they've got adults or responsible people just keeping an eye on saying, make sure you don't go too off the rails. I mean, the thing was, when they were first trying to get the Harry Potter movies off the ground, they were approached Steven Spielberg to direct the first one. And he's like, I'll do it, but Haley Joel Osment has to be Harry Potter. And,
I have heard
this.
Yeah,
and he just worked with, Haley Joel Osment on AI, the kid was a really, really good actor, and he still is. But, it would have thrown everything just way off whack. I'm glad that J.K. Rowling had enough clout and enough sort of insight to say, I'm going to say no to Steven Spielberg because no, it has to be.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure her philosophy was it had to be an entirely UK based cast, which is why there are no Americans really in that entire series. Hey, let's do one more, and then I've got my wrap up question for you, if that's cool.
Oh, sorry, you were probably just after yes no answers.
No. This is exactly what I was after. I'd love to do this again, by the way, because I've still got 5 more movies. So if you ever want to do this again, but the last one, and this I did say, as long as you like School of Rock, I'll be happy. But I think if you don't like this, I might end the call immediately. No, I'm joking. But what are your thoughts, and have you seen the 2000 animated Disney film, The Emperor's New Groove, starring David Spade and John Goodman?
I certainly have, and I loved it. Yeah.
I am raising both hands in the air for audio listeners. Thank you. Because it's my favorite movie of all time, I think.
It's an utterly charming movie. It's, let's throw a lot of love to Patrick Warburton.
Oh, yes. He is just the movie's breakout and just delivers in every single scene. He's the comedic heart of the film. Like, it just works because of Kronk, I think.
Yeah. Now you probably already know this, but it underwent the process of making it was really tortured.
Yeah, I've seen the documentary, The Sweat Box, which talks about how because it started as a musical called Kingdom in the Sun.
Kingdom in the Sun or Of the Sun or something, yeah.
And it was Owen Wilson, I think. No, was it Woody Harrelson and David Spade or something like that?
I think Owen Wilson was attached. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they
had songs, and Sting was writing the score, and then they changed it to The Emperor's New Groove last minute, and Sting got shafted. And the whole documentary's just got Sting being pissed off that they're not using any of his songs.
There's a terrific article on the New York Magazine culture section called Vulture. If you Google Vulture, Emperor's New Groove, you'll find there's very long oral history of the making of Emperor's New Groove. It goes into a bit of, I think it might be repeating a bit of stuff that's in that Sweatbox documentary, but it's also got some interesting info as well. But yeah, no, Emperor's New Groove, very good movie. No, I think it was doing.
I just thought comedically, it was so unique for a Disney film, and it just the breaking of the fourth wall and the acknowledgement that things in the movie weren't adding up and didn't make sense. As a kid, I was just like, I'd never seen that. What? And I'm like, what? They know they're in a movie?
A very quirky sense of humor, really funky visual style as well. Yeah, there's a lot to enjoy in The Emperor's New Groove.
Well, I love that. Well, I'll get on to our final question, and the final question does take another 5 to 10 minutes, so I apologize in advance for that. But basically, I like to wrap up, and I'm really interested in your thoughts on this, by asking the guest, what is one movie, album, book, and if you're into them, video game that you think everyone should experience in their life? It doesn't have to be your favorite. It's just something that you're like, I think everyone should hear this album, see this movie, read this book, play this game.
Okay. I'm not really a gamer. I mean, I will say Mortal Kombat.
We love Mortal Kombat. The fatalities, all of it.
I have a good young friend, Liam, who is always trying to sort of get me into gaming, and I'm like, too many buttons.
Yeah. Too much to think about. Yeah, just let me watch a movie. I don't have to do any input. Give
me a joystick and a fire button. Let me just play Galaxian or Galaga or something where I can blow the shit out of a bunch of aliens. I don't want to have to walk through. The Last of Us looks great. It looks, I'm a huge fan of how immersive games have become.
Yeah.
But it almost feels like this is going to be too much for me.
Don't worry, I'm there as well. Like, I've talked on my pod about how I turn on a game and there's like 10 minutes of cutscenes and stuff, and I'm like, I've switched off already. I'm not into this.
Here's the other thing. My nephew Rory, my man. Shout out. I don't know if he's listening, but
shout out to Rory.
I'll tell him to listen.
Tell him to listen. Be like, Rory, there's a special surprise for you in the podcast. Try to find it.
But he sent me a link to like some cutscenes from the most recent Mortal Kombat. It was like 2 hours worth of them. And it's really terrific animation. Do you have an adult audience, Mike, or is it a youthful audience? I mean,
I reckon generally males between 18 to 34.
They'll be fine then when I say that I got really stoned and watched the cutscenes.
Yeah, oh, you can say that.
I don't want to lead anyone astray. I got very baked and watched the cutscenes from all. I was like, this is dope. This is fantastic. Why wasn't
That's
the new
better than just...
Why wasn't the new Mortal Kombat movie more like this? So
yeah. All right, quick side note. What did you think of the new Mortal Kombat movie? And then we'll get back to the last question.
It was fine.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, look, it wasn't bad.
Joel Edgerton was amazing, the Aussie guy.
Josh Lawson.
Who was it? Josh Lawson. He was fantastic.
He was really good, offering it up as Kano. Yeah. That was fantastic. But being, sort of a young man of the 90s, I recognized that the Paul W.S. Anderson Mortal Kombat from 95, 96? Anyway, it isn't necessarily great, but it's not good, but it's great, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I know what you mean. Yeah. It's great. Is it any good? No. Movies. Okay, then. Well, look, you could say the classics. I mean, everyone should watch The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 in their life. One I personally recommend is called Out of Sight. It stars George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez, made in 1998 by the great filmmaker Steven Soderbergh. Crime caper Clooney is this career bank robber who usually ends up in prison because he never uses a gun. He tries to be George Clooney charming, and sometimes he gets away with it. Mostly he doesn't. He's ended up in prison. J-Lo is the federal marshal who is on his trail and also has a bit of a crush on him, and they both have kind of a crush on each other. It is smart. It is sexy. The soundtrack absolutely kicks ass. It's got just a wealth of great supporting actors. Not to compare I am in no way comparing myself to Quentin Tarantino when I say this, but Tarantino said something once like, if I'm going out on a date with a girl and we're about 3 dates in, I'm going to show her the Western Rio Bravo, and she better like it, or there's not going to be a fourth date. On like a second or third date, or somewhere along the line, if I'm with a partner, and it's a really good movie to watch with a partner. Like, I hope you like Out of Sight, because we're going to watch Out of Sight tonight. So that's...
It's like have you seen How I Met Your Mother, where Ted says his fiance's never seen Star Wars, and then it cuts to Marshall and he's like, Ted, the only people who haven't seen Star Wars are the characters in Star Wars, and that's because they lived the Star Wars, Ted. They lived them.
I can hear Jason Segel say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Book an album. I think the album would have to be Grace by Jeff Buckley.
Is that the one with Hallelujah?
It is indeed, yeah.
And that's a great way to bring it back to Shrek, because Rufus Wainwright's cover of Hallelujah is in that movie. Yeah,
look, Jeff Buckley, taken from us far too soon. He went for an ill-fated midnight swim in the Mississippi back in 97 and drowned, but he left us with, a bunch of outtakes and a bunch of, records cobbled together from various sessions and that, and one perfect album in Grace. It's
nice.
It's fantastic. I love it. I love it. I was fortunate enough to see him live in Melbourne back in the mid-90s and actually got to shake the man's hand and got my copy of Grace signed. So, that's one definitely worth listening to. Books.
I love that.
I don't know if you can see this. Hang on a sec. But cases full of books over there, so I've got to pick one.
Doesn't have to be fiction. Can be non-fiction, self-help, like anything that you've just been like, this was really good to read.
That's... oh, damn, man.
There's a lot of books.
I'm looking at my man Stephen King. Right now, because I've got pretty much everything by Big Steve. Well, actually, up to a certain point. I think there was a time around the mid-90s, because I used to... his book would come out in paperback. His latest book would come out in paperback. Of course, I'd snap it up. And I got no plans for the rest of the next few days. I'm just going to be mainlining Stephen King here. But I think I stopped around maybe 96 or 97. And occasionally we'll pick up some from there, but stuff from the classics. This may sound like a dubious choice, but I mean, I'm a big fan of Pet Sematary. I don't think I've liked the movies that they've made of it, because it is one of King's most atmospheric books. It's one of his most horrific, absolutely. But not in a big, bold, obvious way, just one in a way that sort of gets under your skin. It's very, very sad, but also just full of heart as well. It's just, I remember reading it in my mid-teens and, walked in page one person, walked out the end page, a different person's like, this was so good. And it affected me in ways that, it affected me more than I thought it would. I thought I'm just going to get a nice little Stephen King horror story here, but it taught me a lot about love, loss, family, all that kind of stuff.
This is kind of like me with Shrek, guy. Nice. Sorry to undermine that sentiment.
No. Wherever you get it, wherever you get that feeling is valid.
No, I love that description though. Like clearly the thematic content resonated with you. I've only seen the recent film, which I didn't mind, but yeah, it is amazing when a book kind of just touches you like that and you're like, wow.
Yeah, so that's one that certainly that leaps to mind. I'll tell you what, when we do part 2 of this and then part 3 and part 4, I will have more titles for you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's about it. We've gone a bit over, so sorry to keep you an extra 5 minutes, but I've loved every second of this. And again, I'd love to do this again sometime. Do you want to just give a quick plug to the listeners where they can hear you, find you, see you, whatever you want?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm part of the Four Finger Discount Network. Our flagship show is Four Finger Discount, which goes through every episode of The Simpsons from the beginning of the series up to whenever it ends, which is probably going to be never. We're somewhere around, I think we're near the end of season 16 right now. So
yeah, it's been a really nostalgic season for me, actually. Like I've been listening each week, and one of the recent ones you had on was the one with Ray Romano, Don't Fear the Roofer.
Yeah.
And I listened to that one. I'm like, I forgot I really like that episode. Maybe it's because I really like Ray Romano, but it's a nostalgic period of the show, I'm finding.
Absolutely. And look, both Dan and I have been surprised by the quality of the episodes. There was a sort of general consensus like, it's starting to lose the plot, or it lost the plot around season 12 and, never really got it back. We're like, no, there's stuff in here that's, not everyone's a winner. And, you can see there's a little bit of wear and tear on the whole format and the characters and all that. But, there's gems in there, either little gems in the episode or the episode itself is a bit of a gem. So, yeah, there's that. So we do The Simpsons, Four Finger Discount, but we've got, Talking Seinfeld, going down to South Park, Tales of Futurama. Dando does one with his lovely wife Nicola, the one about Friends. So they're covering Friends. Mitch is actually back doing stuff for the patrons. They're doing counting on old episodes, and occasionally do the Movie Guys podcast, which is reviews. We did one of the Truman Show not long ago, which we were really happy with, but we did record one yesterday for Starship Troopers for the 25th anniversary.
With Neil Patrick Harris. He's in that, isn't he?
With Neil Patrick Harris as the psychic space Nazi. So yeah, it's a fantastic movie, and I think we did a really good episode on it. That's going to be coming out soon. So yeah, there's those. As you mentioned at the start, I will occasionally appear on FOFOP opposite my man Charlie Clausen. Talking movies. We have about 6 or 7 episodes with heading the video store. So it's just a couple of middle-aged dudes talking about their movie memories. It's great. I have such a good time doing that with Charlie.
They're fun to listen to. The most recent one was favorite movie soundtrack, soundtrack picks, and Mortal Kombat came up in that, didn't it? Because I edited that one.
If you want to hear a couple of middle-aged guys yelling at each other, by all means, tune in. Great. So there's those, and I think Charlie and I are going to be recording another one soon. He hit me up with an episode idea, so hopefully we'll get that in the can before Christmas. And what else? I don't know. If this wasn't enough Guy Davis for you, feel free to find me on Twitter at Robert Guy Davis. Also on Facebook, not really on Instagram. I think I've got maybe 6 pictures in all the time I've been on Instagram. But Twitter.
All right, everyone go follow Guy on Instagram and like all the pictures to make him post more.
It's really just me putting
lifty spirits.
It's me being what they call a wife guy, except it's my girlfriend, but I'm just like, look how gorgeous she is. Am I right?
I'm a lucky
I'm a
guy.
lucky fella. So yeah, there's that. Yeah,
Awesome.
and that's about the extent of it. And occasional bylines in on some websites here and there. I haven't written as much for a while, but I'm trying to sort of stretch those muscles and get back into it. So watch this space. There'll be a bit of podcast stuff and a bit of writing stuff, hopefully in 2023.
Awesome, Guy. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been awesome.
Mike, it was my absolute pleasure. As I said, you're the hardest working young man in show business. So I'm so glad you took a moment out of your schedule to have a chat with me. Big fan of just you handling the pots and pans on all these various projects, and wish you the best of success with what you've got moving forward, because it's going to be all Mike all the time, from what I understand.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Mike Talks. Hey, if you like this, there are heaps of other episodes all on this feed. Just type Mike Talks. There are episodes up there with Jack Post from Hamish and Andy, Broden Kelly from Auntie Donna, Goggleboxes, Adam and Simon, and as well as that, Guy's on-air partner, Brendan Dando from Four Finger Discount. Here's a little excerpt of that before we go.
Because that moment, to me, was my favorite Star Wars moment in my lifetime. It was so funny. So I'm sitting there, it's about 12:30 at night. I have to wait till the kids go to bed. Nicholas gone to bed. I've done some editing on the podcast. I'm sitting on the couch. That's my Mando time. I'm sitting there. It's about 12:30. And that X-Wing goes past. And I just went, and I left my chair, and I just froze like this for about 5 minutes. I was shaking. I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. And then can we do spoilers?
If you haven't seen Mando, Luke Skywalker is in the last episode.
but then when R2-D2 comes out, it got me. Like, I've never cried at anything Star Wars related.
Oh, wow, man.
I had a tear trickle down my face. It was like revisiting old friends,
Hear that episode and all the episodes of Mike Talks right here on the 20th Century Boy feed. Thanks for checking out my podcast, and take a listen to the most recent episode and join the fun. This podcast was a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to check out all our other content, stay up to date at radio.mike on Instagram, and get in touch, radiomikepod@gmail.com.